now we are live, and it's that
Oh,
time of the
yay.
week. It's that time again. We are going to be doing Geek Speak. Today, we're going to be talking about mobile first marketing strategies for 2025. So, things that phone is always really important, and we're going to go over, things that you could do to really improve your marketing for mobile. And of course, my name is Phelan with Seymour Digital Media.
And I'm Rena from Littleworks Indie Media. And yes, we are talking mobile, and mobile also we need to think about as um, for tablets too, not just phones. But yes,
Yeah.
I'm actually seeing a huge increase in some of my clients' users using mobile. At a lot of the times, for many years, it was fairly even, and some were desktop was coming up first, but now I'm seeing more and more push, especially the B2C uh, um, clients. So they're the
Mm.
ones that are getting a lot of traffic by mobile. So we want to make sure that works well. So, Phelan, what do we do? Where do we start with this?
Well, I mean, the first one for a high level just strategy is going to be making sure your website's fast. A phone just
Yes,
doesn't have the same resources that a desktop computer has, and so
yes,
you're going to need to make sure that it's streamlined.
that's
Google, of
right.
course, indexes for mobile first. So if your phone doesn't
Yes,
work well with mobile, you're not going to be on. Your rankings are going to get affected on Google. So that's going to be
yes,
super important. Um, oh yeah,
yes. So, just to bring it back to like the basics, if how do you know your phone is not organized for mobile? Um, if first of all, we need to talk about responsiveness. Now, almost every website is responsive now, except for the very old ones. So if your site is like, you know, over 5 years old, then you might not be responsive yet. But so that means that if your text is super small on your phone, then you need to look at that. And if you're allowing WordPress to organize and optimize automatically your mobile view, and you've got very large menu items, then that's going to be, you're going to want to change those things up. So speed is definitely number one because if users go and your page doesn't load and they move away, then that's going to be detrimental. But the second thing is in the design. Sorry, did I
yeah.
just pull that away from you?
Oh no 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 no! I someone is going to be coming in the house, so I want to make sure I could hit the mute button.
Oh,
Just
terrific,
yeah, just
terrific.
barking dogs. The joys of doing videos live. Um, yeah, I definitely if you've got an older website, it's definitely time to look at making sure that it is up to date, it's responsive. Uh, there's lots of simple design techniques that can really make it easy on you.
Mhm.
One weird tactic that I always like to use is using an M instead of a PX. So instead of a pixel, you use an M because that's actually responsive. So it's like it adjusts to the size that you give it. Um,
Right.
yeah. But there's also other things as well, not just with the design, but also the technical component. Make sure that because it's got less room to run the JavaScript, that you're not overburdening it with lots of extra third-party libraries, lots of making sure that you run it through PageSpeed Insight,
iframes,
iframes.
iframes. That's
Um,
the big one. For ticket sales, that's really big for ticket sale, people to sell tickets.
yeah, but there's all kinds of other tricks as well. Like with an iframe, you
Hmm.
can also do things like async, which is slightly technical, but it's really just adding one little word in when you embed an iframe. And all it does
Yeah.
is it just pushes it off the screen until you need it. It's like a lazy load, but
Hmm.
basically it's just load this when you have an opportunity. But most people are not scrolling immediately within like 2 seconds to the iframe, so you have some
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot of and there's a lot of really useful tools out there, or plugins. I'm using one right now. I'm trying out on a client's website called a Rapid Load, which has actually
Right.
done a really good job. I'm fairly
Hmm.
impressed with them. So I might be
And
looking at adding them to other people's websites. So there's all kinds of fancy stuff you could do. These tools will do at the
caching.
back end, and
Yeah.
caching and chunking your JavaScript and
Yeah.
minifying and all kinds of
Yeah,
fancy
so you need to
words.
talk to a developer about this category of things, but there are some other things that you can just do yourself too. And the one thing that you would want to check your site for regularly is the speed time. So you can do a Google Developers has like a speed loading time, because if you think that your site loads fine and you're doing it from a desktop, for example, it's because when you go to visit a site, the first time it loads in real time, and then you get what's called a cached site to your browser. And that means that the second and third and fourth time that you visit your site, you're not actually going up to the server where the site lives. You're just accessing that cached version. So it's super important to understand that your experience of your site is not necessarily everybody's experience with the site. And especially on mobile, I find that mobile, when people are using data, especially, um, that can affect and slow down the loading of a site, and make it feel you'll notice a difference when you're on mobile. Um, and um, and then I want to go back a little bit more to design, because we keep flipping through technical and design, and those two things are really equally important.
Yeah,
But mobile optimized content, some of the things we already talked about was, sometimes you can get like, if you have columns that are vertical on a desktop, what happens is the mobile version sort of like organizes those columns one on top of each other, and
yeah.
you want to make sure that that makes sense for you, and that the columns aren't too long before you get to the next one, and that there's a call to action button at a relatively, periodically throughout your site, so that people can take action, and that there's no giant long white spaces that sometimes happens on mobile when it's automatically styled by the WordPress theme. And that your visuals work and your menu is smaller. So sometimes we remove menu items on a mobile version. We don't necessarily need to have all of them available, because we have other ways to get to those pages, or we only want to feature the top important pages. That's another way. Um,
I
yeah,
just want
and
to say,
especially vertical things. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I'd also say as like a good technique for if you don't want
hmm
to have everything in your top navigation is to have your
yeah,
footer menu do the heavy lifting of having a big, wide,
yes,
covers your whole
yes,
website, because that way you can kind of hide all the pages down there. Someone can access them if they
yes,
need to, and then that
yes.
way you're focusing on a much smaller and more concentrated
Street,
product menu, or a menu
yes,
at the top where it's really
yeah.
focused and small and easy.
Yes, I totally agree. Okay, so under mobile optimized content, we had another thing that I think you know more about than I do, but voice search optimization with natural language SEO. So do you know about voice search? I don't even think we talked about this yesterday on our call.
So voice SEO, so having
hmm
it be able to rank and have it show up.
hmm
Generally, you want your content to be super readable. That's where you're
hmm
also going to get things, I think, like structured data. I believe that they use stuff like that to do it. So it's a little bit of code that goes into the head. Um, uh, it's in, to my mind, or to what I've read, is that voice SEO was supposed to really take off, and it just didn't the same way.
hmm Right.
It just doesn't work the same way, and so it was big in 2023. I know that it was a
So
big one.
my question is, like, I use voice search a lot when I'm out and about, and I have a few friends. I have one friend in particular who used to do it a lot, and that's where I got the idea from. Um, I want to know from people who are watching this, do you guys use voice search on your mobile device, or am I just a weirdo? So just put that in the comments below and let us know. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, I also use voice search myself, but it's
Yeah,
mostly for asking like a question, like what's the origins of the word blah blah blah, and then I'm looking for like an etymology of a word. I'm not
right.
necessarily like find me the best pizza place around me. That's not really a search that I would do with
Oh, I
voice.
do. I do. I do. Where's the nearest gas station?
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, that one makes sense because the kind of gas
Yeah,
stations are kind of ubiquitous, so you're not really brand isn't as
yeah,
important as like
that's
something where
true.
it's like plumber, and you're like, how did you
Hmm.
pick that plumber? Why is that the plumber that
Hmm.
is like the one that you're presenting to me? Like, there's a bunch of questions because I think people
Right.
when having something like that or like a restaurant, they like options. Like,
Yeah.
your top five. Like, find me the top five Indian restaurants near me, and so you get to see those options and see which one
Hmm.
actually appeals to you. So I feel like one that's a little more deliberative versus one where it's just like it's a straightforward question. That makes sense to me
Yeah.
for voice SEO of like a question that it's not
Hmm.
really something you need to pick. That's like
Yeah.
why I use like the etymology of a word. Like I don't really
Yeah.
care who tells me the etymology. I might, but
Hmm.
generally I'm not like I just want to know where this word came from.
Yeah.
Same for like a gas station. Like makes sense to me.
Um, yeah. And so, okay, so let's go back to the design of things because there was another piece of content that we didn't talk about, and that is video. And I know Phelan in our notes we had the idea that you might want to do vertical style videos, but most of the explainer videos for businesses do tend to be a landscape view, right?
Yeah,
But one thing that I want to make sure that people realize is that autoplay is not great and on mobile at all. So you want to let people decide because if they're paying for data, then they might not want you to be enforcing their video play. The second part of that is that there are some WordPress themes that Josh and I have come across that don't support video. It just won't run, and so we usually swap out the video for photos in that case. So you can do that, have a different set of media on each version.
yeah.
Um, and
Uh,
then the sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say with the video thing and mobile,
Yeah.
one thing to bear in mind is it most likely, even if you have it set to autoplay, I know Chrome by default will
Hmm.
not will
Oh yes,
it
that's
won't
right.
allow that because
Okay, that's
basically
good.
it's too much load on the JavaScript thread, and they're just like, no,
Right.
you don't get that ability. We'll pick if we want to see the video. But yeah, because I've even had like Google remove ads because just it was going to take too long for the ad to
Right.
like play, and
Right.
so they're just like, yeah, we're
Right.
not going to run this ad on this website. And I was like, felt kind of mean to the person who was like trying to make money through AdSense, but I didn't
Totally.
see an ad, so I'm not really complaining that much.
Totally. Totally. That does make sense. Um, And then, so other pieces for your marketing, because it's not all about your website, other pieces for marketing is social media and organizing your social media channels with content that is mobile friendly and you can engage really easily with that content. So that's using stories and reels and in-app shopping features and utilizing Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And chatbots came up under this section for us too. So those are the things that you can do and utilize to keep your marketing going on mobile really nicely. So people can ask you questions instead of having to sift through your website if you have a chatbot there.
Yeah, I know. Like, say Shopify has a inbuilt one that's very basic,
Hmm.
but
Yeah,
does most of the trick for having someone reach out to you, and if they have a question and they hit you up at the
yeah,
right time, then that might push someone over the edge of actually
yeah.
purchasing your product. So it's always good to because usually when you're like buying stuff on mobile, it's more spur of the moment purchase.
Yes, it always annoys me when no one's at the other end and it's really just a form that you fill out. That's not a chat bot. I have a really I was an early adopter on a chatbot platform years and years ago, so I got it for free, which was really fun. I love that for me. But it goes straight into my Slack channel. So
Okay,
it'll trigger a Slack conversation, and
yeah,
that works really really well. So I get the notification. So if you do have a chat bot on your a chat ability on your website, then figure out how you can actually answer that immediately instead of having it go through email as a preference rather than as a standard rather than um, automatically going to email because I know a lot of companies think they prefer that.
Yeah.
But it does. It prevents me from booking, it prevents me from buying, and then I forget what I was doing, and they would have gotten that sale if they had just answered the question, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And Slack is definitely a really good option for that because like that's its
Yeah,
intended purpose is to be like
yeah,
a connector point where you can have real time
yes,
conversations with multiple services in one spot. Uh, and so yeah, that's definitely option to look at. Um,
yeah,
um, I was gonna say just circling back to the speed and how. So one thing to note is uh, when we were talking about the caching as well, I
hmm,
wanted to mention that if you are to test anything on your website, do it in an incognito tab. That way, you never
yes.
have
Oh,
to
I
worry
forgot
about.
to mention that.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
yes.
that's one. It's the same thing as well. If you make any changes to your website and you're really like,
Hmm,
why aren't these being reflected? Do it. Look at it
hmm.
incognito. That's most likely caching is stopping you from seeing the new version of the
Yeah,
page. Um,
yeah,
and I also wanted to say that what PageSpeed Insights tells you doesn't always translate to how it feels for a person.
yes.
So they
That is
are,
true.
yeah, so they're going to do it from a technical perspective to kind of load everything and kind of see how it goes, and they're
Yeah.
trying to technically analyze it. Whereas if you
Hmm,
actually use the website, it
hmm.
it might do some fancy stuff to make it feel like it's actually loading faster than it is.
So, and that brings up this other thing that I take off sliders off websites, especially on the homepage, because technically speaking, that takes a really long time to load, even though the user experience is that the first photo comes up quite quickly, so it's not actually a user issue. But when it comes to SEO, correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time I checked, a slow loading site was downgraded or not given very good SEO to begin with. So having a fast, speedy site is very important, even for SEO in addition to user experience, because Google privileges a user's experience overall.
Yeah, and especially one that we've been focusing on as well is making sure the everything above the fold
Yes.
can load super quickly. So that's why, like, I'd also
Yeah.
agree that sliders above the fold. The reason is it's like there's all this JavaScript to make it run and be technically
Yeah.
there. Even if the images don't load in right away, but like just to actually have the buttons that do stuff, that could
Yeah.
be really taxing on the system. So anything above the fold, because most of these new systems are actually really good at everything that you haven't seen yet. They're busy in the background loading all that stuff, and it takes
Yeah.
a couple seconds, right? Because the computers are really moving at like milliseconds, but
Yeah.
and to them it's like, every millisecond kind of counts. Whereas like if you're experiencing a website in 2 to 3 seconds, you're not going to notice like that 2 second to 3 second range. Like you're not going to
Yeah.
notice a
Yeah.
website
Yeah.
not loading stuff at the same speed.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. But you do get warnings. I got a warning today on Microsoft Clarity that it was taking 3 seconds to load a page, which I thought I started to panic about. But then I actually did it myself on my phone, and it felt okay. So I'm not going to do anything about it immediately, but it's on my radar. Um,
Yeah.
I want so we haven't really talked about mobile first advertising, but that's kind of like working with the social stuff. So when you're actually creating up your advertising, make sure you're sizing all of your images and optimizing it for mobile use, which means no small print. I
Yeah.
think that annoys me the most, and adjust so that you don't just have one. A lot of people use one square version of their ad, and then they just allow Meta to crop it accordingly across platforms. But you can upload various versions to
Hmm.
that are optimized for different aspect ratios and placements on the mobile phone. Because if you think about it, you've got your phone here and you're going through something, and so your ad might only, oopsies, let's see if I can get this. Your ad might only be a sliver of your phone, which is quite small. So
Hmm.
if that's the case, then you don't want to be having a whole pile of text that's going to shrink down because images are not mobile responsive. They respond together. So any text you put on that image is going to get really small. So I always think of putting text in the status is more important than on the image. You don't want to load that up like you would for a newspaper ad, right?
Yeah.
Which is what this the idea comes from.
Well, and also off of that as well, when picking fonts, don't pick your
Yes,
body font
readable.
should be a sans serif. It shouldn't
Yes.
have the little edges and little,
Scripts and things.
yeah, like
Scripts.
because like when you start squeezing them down and they're really small, all those lines make it really hard to see as
Yeah,
well.
they roll into the
Yeah,
letters roll into each other.
I mean,
They
you could do it for
touch.
like a big heading, that's fine, but
Hmm.
anything where it's the body text should not have a serif font.
Yeah. And so in that line, using retargeting strategies will increase your conversion rates. That's just normal for all advertising. We don't want to miss out on that, but that's not a particularly mobile thing to do. And then on our list too, let's see, it's 20 minutes. Okay, good. On our list too, we have a little piece about mobile commerce, like m-commerce, which is sort of like the mobile version of e-commerce, in case you didn't get
Yeah.
that. So ensure seamless checkout experience via mobile. So that means that you want to check your store, test your store from your mobile in addition to your desktop to make sure that it's working. It should be working if it's working on your desktop, but that it's working from a user experience. The buttons aren't too small or too close together that you're trying to touch one and the other one goes. You want some space around those buttons, and that you can read everything, that the platform, the store platform that you're using is mobile responsive. You can read everything nicely and see everything that you need to see when making a purchase. I almost ran out of air there. Sorry.
No worries.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, actually, well, now that it's kind of finalized, the last bit of the last few companies have done it where they're actually doing
Hmm.
in-app full checkout. Like you may
Oh,
have your own Shopify, but Facebook will entirely run the checkout for you, and then they
yes,
just send you an
that's right.
order for that, and so it's all in-app. So those are definitely new options that you want to make sure you're
Yeah,
taking advantage of. Of course, this was pioneered
right.
by TikTok in China. They were really big with that of like doing a product that like a person's showing
Yeah,
off in the live, and then you could in the bottom corner. Same thing with YouTube. You can do that as well. So you can have
mm,
your posts that are
yeah,
about a product, and so then the checkout's right there in YouTube, and it stays all within the Google ecosystem, and then you just
yeah.
get the sale on your Shopify store. Um,
You know,
so
Facebook used to run that, but I haven't seen one in ages, a Facebook store in a long
my,
time.
if memory serves, they got in some hot water.
Oh,
Generally, Facebook's always kind of in hot water with any sort of retailer. Oh well, they have the
hmm.
largest chargeback of any company. They have a 9%
Oh,
chargeback
oh my
rate.
gosh.
Yeah,
Okay.
when 1% is the average for a Shopify store that you're
Oh,
allowed to
that's
have.
not very good. Yeah.
So
Okay.
they're always kind of in hot water, but I think that they've been avoiding it because yeah, uh, Visa and Mastercard are pretty powerful
Hmm.
companies that tell you what to do.
Totally. So that sort of there's so yeah, so they talk about it in brand, like use the apps. If you have a brand that has an app, use the app. Make sure that your marketing is strategy is organized around those apps, and especially app exclusive deals. That means loyalty rewards and personalized content. So there are some CRMs that offer loyalty reward organization. So if you've got that, try that out and make sure it works for your mobile because that's really great. And personalized content. So another thing is collecting in your CRM, collecting not just email addresses, but of course phone numbers so that you can push your promos out to people by text, which I actually really love. There are some um, retailers that I have on my that I've chosen to have, and I love it when they send me their information so that I don't miss out on things that I would already be buying anyways, and getting a good deal on those. Um, so why mobile first? Well, over 60% of global web traffic comes from mobile devices now. So that's actually a nice big chunk. Google's mobile in-first indexing means that search rankings prioritize mobile-friendly sites, which is what Phelan had mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah,
And consumers increasingly research and shop on their phones, making mobile optimization critical for sales. So you can't get any better reasons to jump on board mobile first in your marketing strategy than those three reasons in my mind.
yeah.
Um, and I'm just trying to go through this. I can't think of anything that we've missed. Did you? or that we can. We've got 6 minutes. I think we blew through this really quickly this time.
Yeah, I think we went through faster than we were expecting. I was just going to say, I just wanted to circle back to one thing just to make it explicit for people. The WordPress plugins that would help you with like minifying and stuff, they'll do that out of the box. You don't need to hire a developer for those ones as well.
Oh, right.
So they're
Yes.
really useful
Yes.
that way, that they'll just do all the fancy stuff on the background with just like check off a box. The
Yeah.
only thing you have to do that, oh, fair warning, go check your website right after an incognito, because
Yes.
minification sometimes might just blow up your website, and then you have to undo it and
Yes.
then clear the cache. And totally normal if
Yeah.
that does happen. Just turn off the plugin. Don't panic. Usually, as soon as the plugin's removed, it goes back to normal.
Now,
Uh,
Phelan, sometimes people think it's once and done, and that's it. And from my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, every time WordPress puts out a new version and your plugins put out new versions and you add stuff to your website, you kind of need to look at that regularly. So how I think that's what I've been told. How do you look at it, and what's the optimal in your mind? What's the optimal time to check in with this?
well, I guess it's a so for me, it's a function of how often are you making big sweeping changes to the website.
Yeah.
How big a change is it? Are you changing, updating WordPress core? Right. To me, that's like a big thing. Like if I'm changing it, and especially if it's like a first number, right? So like first number is a major change, and then the period, and then the second one's a minor
Right.
change, and the third one's just a patch.
Okay.
That's how that number system works. And so
Oh, I
if
didn't know
it's,
that.
yeah, it's actually one of the smarter things where you're like, oh, that makes sense. Like how you do that. Like, and so if that first number is getting updated, I'm going to be looking at the website right after that gets updated, because you just don't know
Yeah.
how your plugins are all going to respond to a new core, especially a major
Hmm.
core update. That's kind of the biggest one. Uh,
Okay.
Most of the time, I could just periodically check on it. It's like once a month, just to sort of make sure. Again, it depends on how much you're
Yeah.
updating, you're changing stuff. If you're not changing a
Yeah.
lot and you're just doing the required updates, and definitely long after they first come out, so that if there are any patches they need to do, they've done them,
Yeah.
then you should be good. Like periodically checking it, nothing serious. But if you're like doing lots of content's getting added to the website, you're trying out lots of plugins, then yeah, you should be looking at your website a lot, because you're messing around with it a lot, and you just don't know how these things start playing with each other. Oh, also,
Yeah.
other pro tip, this is a mistake I've made in the past: only use one of those performance plugins.
Oh yeah.
To
You
only
can't have both. That
Yeah,
messed
do
that
not.
up. We've
I
done that
accidentally
before.
did that. I didn't know that they had done it, because they were on Flywheel, and Flywheel actually
Yeah.
uses their own. And so I
Yes.
installed it and was doing a bunch of stuff, and I was like, "Why is this breaking?" And then they told me like, "Yeah,
Yes.
you're trying to like double do what we're doing." And I was like,
Redo. Yes.
"Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
we have a hosting situation too, and there's one that's actually at the server level.
yeah,
They have whatever software that does that. So we're not allowed, there's a certain number of plugins that we're not allowed to add to the sites as as a natural, that's not the right word, as a, I forgot what the word is, but it doesn't really matter.
yeah." Just as a function, they'll just
Yeah,
block it
you
out
just
of like
yeah.
the ability to do that. Uh, uh, oh, it's good tip from Greg.
Clear cache. Oh yeah.
After
Clear
updating a
cache after an
theme,
update
reminify
thing.
if you see a problem. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. Uh,
Yeah.
and
That's great.
and I think this is Pip was saying this about the voice
Yes, but
SEO.
no? What does that mean?
The
Oh,
voice,
yes, but no. Oh, right on. Okay, so we had that earlier. That's great.
yeah, forgot to put it up. And yeah, I think that there's just a lot more tools out there, I'd say, for helping you do this. So I think that it's
Hmm.
easier now than I would say it's ever been to get these changes and build out these tools. I think that it's um, yeah, you're. I think you're in a really good spot to. You don't have to like pay as many developers these days to get these tools and to get these features. I was
Yeah.
going to say one last thing of testing your website. There's actually two ways to test your website from Google. So the first way is to go to PageSpeed Insights, the
Right.
website, and the second way is if you open up your developer tools. And I know this is a bit more
Yes.
advanced for people, but I'm just saying it just so for the class to know. And if you go inspect element and you go to that the developer tools, along the very top menu, you'll see the very last one is Lighthouse. So
Yep.
you can your locally test on your own browser, and so you can also play with the different features. So it's like how much you want to throttle it, how much you want to, what type of phone are you on, like there's all kinds of features you can use there as well. So it's a more advanced version, but it's also cool to see. I like to test it once in a while to see if the Lighthouse gives me a different than the page speed.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Great. All right. Well, I think that takes us to 11:30, and
Yes, it
so we
does.
want to so we are actually in the business mixer um, business
Business
mixer
mix.
group on Facebook, and so you can join us there if you want to join our community. Otherwise, you can come back next week and every Thursday, wherever you are watching this from, at 11, or come back for the replay. And we will be discussing next week is, let's see if I can get this fast. We're going to be discussing, oh, it's this month in the world of marketing, my favorite
Yeah.
session of the month. So until next time, we will see you and have a great week.
Bye.